Hello, my friends. Huge show today. I really take you through step by step what happened in Iran, showing lots of footage and answering the question, who wins and who loses? And does this change the Middle East forever? I think it does. And an interview with our friend Alan Boari about the spat between Donald Trump and Elon Musk and a looming censorship bill in Europe. But first, let me invite you to become a subscriber to Rebel News Plus today. You definitely want that. That's the video version of this podcast. I want to show you what happened over Iran, not just tell you. Go to rebelnewsplus.com, click subscribe. It's $8 a month. You get the videos and the satisfaction of supporting Rebel News. Tonight, Israel attacks Iran, destroying their nuclear program. Who benefits and who loses? It's June 13th, and this is the Ezra Levant Show.
Shame on you, you censorious thug.
Last night, I was riveted by the news of Israel mounting a massive surprise attack on Iran. It was a sneak attack that decapitated the Iranian military and terrorist forces and also targeted not only their missile systems, but their underground nuclear operations. Iran reportedly just days away from producing nuclear bombs. I spent the live stream on today's show. I don't know if you know, but every day we have a 1-hour live stream at Rebel News. I sat in the chair. Normally it's Sheila Gunn Reid and David Menzies and others, but I wanted to chew over what was going on. I think it's the most momentous event in the Middle East in a generation. I think it has really cut the Iran down to size militarily. It has removed the grave threat of a nuclear regional superpower there, relieving pressure not just on Israel, but on the Sunni Muslim Arab neighbors, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, the moderate countries there that are really starting to modernize the Arab world. I'll make the case for that, and I'll show you examples of what Israel did by having a very strategic pinpoint operation that minimized civilian casualties. Since I recorded that live stream earlier today, there were indeed some long-range missiles that hit Tel Aviv, and surely there were some casualties. But it is certainly not as devastating as a nuclear war would be, and I feel that Israel will likely be able to suppress those missiles in the days ahead. I'll give you my thoughts, but first I want to show you an interview I just did with Alan Boari. He's with the Foundation for Freedom Online, and we're talking a little bit about the state of freedom of speech, including a looming European law that could censor Twitter users everywhere. That's next. You know, sometimes there's a fight that happens and you want both sides to continue fighting because you don't like either of them. I can think of a few wars that are like that, but sometimes it's the opposite. It's almost like a kid watching mom and dad quarrel, and all you want is for them to get along. Well, that second way is how I felt, and I bet millions of others on the right side of the spectrum felt when they saw Donald Trump and Elon Musk having a very public falling out on Twitter, of all places. I think that it may have been inevitable when two of the most powerful personalities, always the alpha dog in any room they're in, come together. Well, they had some wonderful moments, but they were sure to clash. One's the most powerful man in the world, one's the richest and maybe the smartest man in the world. Are they really going to get along? Well, joining us now to talk about this is someone who follows both of them very closely. I'm talking about our friend Alan Boari. He's the managing director of the Foundation for Freedom Online, and he joins us now from Austin, Texas. I don't know, I hated seeing the quarrel, Alan, because I like both men so much, and when they were together, it was like Batman and Superman teaming up. I thought there's nothing they can't do. And then I see them really going hard at each other. My heart sunk a bit.
Yeah, and there's been simmering tensions between, the so-called tech right, of which, Elon is kind of the prime representative, and the core MAGA right for a while. We saw those tensions flare up back in December over H-1B visas. It does look like Elon Musk and Donald Trump have buried the hatchet now. There's been some conciliatory statements, which I think is very good. And I'm going to get into why they had the falling out to begin with in a second. But first, let's talk about why the tech right and the MAGA right actually need to stick together. And the big reason, one of the biggest reasons, I think, is just coming up next month. The European Union's previously voluntary code of practice on disinformation becomes mandatory for all tech companies under the Digital Services Act, which is the European Union's behemoth of online regulation. Mm-hmm. And that is going to fine US tech companies up to 6% of their global revenues, their annual global revenues, if they don't comply with the demands of faceless European bureaucrats to censor so-called hate speech, to censor so-called disinformation. And you can say this is just a European law, but we've seen in the past the European Union and top European Union officials like Thierry Breton going after platforms like X for purely American speech. So, the European Union started complaining that they allowed Trump back in, I think it was 2023 or 2022. So they see American speech as a problem, and they're going to use the weight of their regulation, their regulatory apparatus, to crush these tech companies that defy them. In fact, we also saw Nina Jankowicz, who was
she was the singer, the digital commissioner.
Yes, the digital commissioner, briefly head of the DHS Disinformation Governance Board. She was going to run the whole US anti-disinformation apparatus. And she recently went before the European Parliament, talked to European policymakers, and encouraged them to stand up to what she called the fascist regime developing in America. She encouraged the Europeans to use their power against her own government that she used to work for, simply because it's under new management now. So this is a threat that's looming. This massive piece of anti-disinformation legislation regulation goes into effect next month. And the only way it can really be fought, I think, is if the MAGA right and the tech right stand together. It can be fought. We can get into how it can be fought. But it's something where, if the European Union wins, then MAGA voices won't be able to speak, and tech companies will face these enormous fines, and they'll have the European boot on their neck telling them what to do. So it's really in the interest of both factions to come together and fight this thing.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that fine. I think you said 6%. Canada introduced the Online Harms Act under Justin Trudeau. It was dropped when Parliament was prorogued, but I think they're going to bring it back. That had fines, I think, of up to 8%. And if I recall the legislation, it was per incident. Like, it's just such a massive amount. And the idea that a Canadian censor could demand that an American company silence someone or pay, I think, 8% of global revenues. It's an expropriation. And I thought that was actually the way we would be saved, Alan, would be that the United States would say, you're not going to destroy our most vigorous tech sector. Hey, let me throw something at you. I remember when Mark Zuckerberg announced his change, and you and I talked about this, and he said he was going to be more free speechy, and he specifically said, with the help of the State Department, because you can't stand, if you're a company, no matter how big you are, you can't stand up to a foreign country. If you want to operate there, you got to follow their rules. So, even a powerful gazillionaire like Zuckerberg cannot beat Brazil or France if they don't have a government behind them. Is that promise of support still there? What gave Zuckerberg the courage to be strong? What's giving Elon Musk the courage to be strong? Is that still there? Even if Trump isn't talking to Elon Musk, is that policy platform still there?
I believe so. Marco Rubio has discussed this, with the founder of my foundation, Mike Benz. He had a long discussion addressing this very topic. J.D. Vance, the vice president, has also addressed this many, many times before, the danger of censorship regulation in both the EU and other foreign nations like the UK. there's a very easy, well, I won't say easy, nothing is easy in Washington, but there's a very simple solution for this. The DSA and regulations like this, they're not just a sledgehammer of regulation, they're a nuclear bomb of regulation. As you said, 8% of global revenues per incident. The purpose of a regulation like that is simply to get tech companies to have a hair trigger response to anything that might violate what these bureaucrats don't want to see on social media, hate speech, disinformation, you name it. The way to neutralize them, the US can do this unilaterally through trade policy. You simply have a tariff that is equal to the amount of the fine that is then rebated to the company that faces the fine. So say Facebook or X, they get a 6% fine of their global revenues because they allowed some sort of disinformation post that the EU didn't like. That fine turns into a tariff on European companies so that the European companies are effectively paying the fine, which is then rebated back to the tech company that triggered it. So that effectively neutralizes the effect of any of these regulations completely, and it makes the European companies pay for it. So if that goes on long enough, then eventually the regulations will simply have to go. But it's still a big policy ask, and it will need real momentum in DC, despite the support of people like J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. To get a policy like that, you need a campaign for it in DC. And that's why the tech right and the MAGA right need to stand together, because defeating online censorship is in both of their interests. If online censorship comes back, neither the tech right nor the MAGA right will ever get anything that they want, whether it's policy cuts, closing the borders, or anything else you can name.
You are so right. You know, I've never met Donald Trump, but my observations of him, you probably follow him just as closely, more closely. I think he can be quick to anger, but I think he can also be quick to forgive. And one example I'll give to you is he was really shooting hard verbally at Carlos Slim, the oligarch who owns the New York Times. He's a Mexican billionaire. And he was really going after him like almost every day. And then you see the two of them having a nice dinner and a smile for the camera. And I think Trump is always thinking about a transaction or what can I get? And sometimes I think he actually likes it when he has a rapprochement with someone who was mean to him, because I think in his mind he thinks, oh, this guy owes me something. He said something so mean to me. I can either hold it in my heart and be upset, or I can say, he owes me one. I want to meet with him now because to expiate his sin, he'll give me something. I think Trump actually loves kissing and making up because he sees it as an opportunity to get something. Now, that's just my 1,000 miles away hunch. I think we've seen Elon Musk already say some friendly things on Twitter. He deleted a really mean tweet where he accused Trump of being in the Jeffrey Epstein files, which, by the way, I don't really believe, because if that were true, you know it would have come out under the Biden or Harris administrations, or I guess Harris didn't have her own administration, but I don't believe that. Any dirt on Trump is already out there, and if they would have had something like that. Anyways, my point is, I think they're going to kiss and make up. I think Trump probably just wants Elon Musk to eat a little bit more humble pie first.
Yeah, and we have to be grateful for Elon Musk because he really changed the game when he bought Twitter. He put his own companies on the line. He put his companies in the firing line, really, for these foreign regulators, including American regulators. If Kamala had won the election, that was a huge risk he took to bring back free speech online. And really, many of the gains of the right over the last few years couldn't have happened without that. Questionable whether any election could have been won without that. That said, Musk can't just throw his biggest political ally under the bus like that without some sort of blowback as well. But I think there's signs of conciliation, and it's not that like the frustrations are understandable, right? Yeah. So the frustrations of Musk with the big beautiful bill, they're not that far removed from the frustrations of the Republican base. The entire Tea Party movement back in, 2012 after 2008 started because of out-of-control government spending and a perception that Republican incumbents in the Senate and the House were not doing enough on this issue. They were making promises and then delivering nothing. Musk's complaints, I think, are very much the same. The issue is you can't get anything done in Washington without compromise and deal making. And all of Trump's border policies, they require that kind of compromising deal-making attitude in Capitol Hill. And there is a lot of funding for border security in the bill. That was a top priority of the MAGA base. That's probably why it's happening. But I think that the tech right more broadly, they're not used to this kind of environment where you need a bit of patience, you need coalition building, you need to wait for your moment to strike to get what you want in a policy sense in DC. They're used to instant results. And that has had and on the one hand, that's had a very positive impact in the form of Doge, which has made some genuine cuts to some horrible programs, including many of the disinformation programs that we've identified at the Foundation for Freedom Online. They've been cut as a result of Doge's activities. So on the one hand, the tech right mentality is having an enormously positive impact in government. On the other hand, when it comes to Congress and Capitol Hill, getting those kind of instant results and instant budget cuts, you need a bit more patience than that.
Yeah. I can imagine Elon Musk, who threw himself into the Doge project, Department of Government Efficiency, brought some of his own brain trust in, was delighted with the results, saw that the public loved it, and then he saw it bargained away in the log rolling deal making. I can imagine he felt crestfallen, but you're right. Elon Musk is either the CEO of a privately held company like in Twitter, or a company like Tesla where he is so dominant, he says something and it becomes law just by saying it. Whereas in Washington, every senator, every congressman, they say, what's in it for me if you want my vote? It is a very different system. And I think you're right. Elon Musk has improved politics by whatever he's done to shape it. But you know what? He's so essential to national security. I mean, Starlink is the public version of his sky-based internet. He's got Star Shield, which is his massive Pentagon project. SpaceX, I see that the space station only has a few years of useful life yet. These are all critically important strategic industries that, yeah, I guess you could get those experts at Boeing to do it. But come on, everyone knows that the Thomas Edison of our era is Elon Musk. And you got to put up with his quirks and you got to put up with his style, because that guy is the most productive human who has ever lived, measured by adding value to the world. He is the most productive person that has ever walked the earth, if you're measuring just by strictly adding value to the world. He's amazing, and you got to put up with some things from amazing guys because they're going to be built different.
That's very true. And you mentioned Boeing. Remember those stranded astronauts? The reason they became stranded was because of the failure of a Boeing spacecraft. And who had to come and rescue them? Of course, it was Elon Musk and SpaceX.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be a trend that'll continue. The tech rise, especially in the defense sector, the aerospace sector. I think we're going to see these new tech companies, which with SpaceX leading the way, displace some of these old defense companies. Especially we see in conflicts like Ukraine, drone warfare making so much of the old defense paradigms completely obsolete. And you have now companies like Anduril, run by another prominent right-wing figure in Silicon Valley, that are waiting in the wings to really modernize the U.S. military. I don't see companies like Lockheed and Boeing getting their act together in time to disrupt the industry in a similar way.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, 2 generations ago, I won't even say 1 generation ago, 2 generations ago, Boeing, Lockheed, et cetera, they really were on the leading edge. The Lockheed Skunk Works, I don't know if you ever heard that phrase. That was sort of places where their Elon Musks of their era were allowed to tinker. That's where they came up with the SR-71 spy plane, that Blackbird, that shocking looking plane that still holds all the speed records. That was when they were quick, nimble, and had that Silicon Valley style of like working out of a garage. Now, if you ask me what I know about Boeing and Lockheed, I see just today that they're all about DEI. They hire people based on race, and it's all HR departments. I saw an interview with the head of Anduril, who's this funky, cool guy, a little bit different, a little bit unusual in his personal style. and he wants to get cracking with drones. I saw a clip of him do an interview on TV explaining what he thought was the future of warfare.
Well, concerns like that are exactly why we need to take control of our own destiny with regard to not just drones, but all of the critical high technology that our military depends on, that our law enforcement depends on, that our critical infrastructure operations depend on. You know, yeah, we buy a lot of Chinese drones, but it gets a lot worse than that. We're buying a lot of Chinese computers as well. Most of the computers the United States buys, even for our most critical military applications, are made in China. Let me ask you a question, of you and your viewers. Could you imagine if during the height of the Cold War, America had been buying all of our computers and command and control terminals from a Russian company headquartered in Moscow under Kremlin supervision? It would have been completely unthinkable. But because we've been hollowed out by globalism, we've outsourced all ability to make the things that allow us to control our destiny, we're forced into buying Chinese drones, Chinese computers, Chinese chips, Chinese sensors.
Well, that's Palmer Luckey. He worked for Facebook with their visor. What was their 3D visor? What was that called again?
The Oculus Rift that he invented, and then he sold it to Facebook. And it's a really interesting story because he wouldn't have founded this this disruptive tech company that is now waiting in the wings to surpass Lockheed and Boeing. If he hadn't been forced out of Facebook, why was he forced out of Facebook? Because at the peak of anti-Trump radicalism in 2017, 2018, Facebook discovered that he supported Donald Trump in the election, and there was such an internal backlash against him that he was forced out of the company. It was truly incredible, simply because he supported a presidential candidate. And so what does he do? He goes and founds Anduril, which is this company we're now talking about.
Yeah, I really, watching Palmer Luckey talk about warfare with the tech mindset and the action orientation and get it done and quicker, faster, better, smarter. You feel like it must have felt in California in the 50s and 60s with the aerospace industry there and the early days of NASA before it got all calcified. And there is an excitement to it. And we all love peace and we all want it, but I think Trump is right about peace through strength. And watching how drones have revolutionized the war on both sides, Ukraine and Russia, especially the attack on their strategic bombers, I think that we have to pay a lot more attention to the Palmer Luckeys, and we can pay a little less attention to the Boeings. Last word to you. Are you confident, getting back to our earlier discussion, that the United States can stop this tidal wave of censorship from Europe? That really is their revenge on J.D. Vance for his speech at Munich. That's their revenge on them for criticizing Keir Starmer's censorship. The European Union loves censorship more than anything in the world. Who's going to win that one?
Well, as I said, there's a very simple policy fix. It's a tariff and rebate policy to neutralize these disinformation fines and these hate speech fines. There has to be a political will in Washington to do it. And there are lots of people in the administration who are in favor of that policy. I think the public pressure has to be a combination of the MAGA right and the tech right, because they have to stand together on this, because if you lose online free speech, you lose it all.
Yeah, I think you're right. Alan Boari, great to catch up with you. I really like your organization. It's called the Foundation for Freedom Online. I follow you. I follow the foundation. I follow your boss, Mike Benz. And I think you really are the pointy edge of the spear on a lot of these issues. And boy, it's so important. I think these are more important than all other issues, because if you can't even talk or think freely, everything else, is a cascading effect. So good luck to you. Thanks for taking the time with us, and keep up the fight.
Thanks, Ezra. Good to be on.
All right, there you have it. Alan Boari with the Foundation for Freedom Online. Here we are in 2025. What's happened in the last 16 years? Well, Iran has built up its military enormously, getting very close to having a working nuclear bomb. In the meantime, to protect itself, it set up proxies that would do its fighting for it. Lebanon was colonized by Hezbollah. Syria was colonized by the Republican Guards. Hamas was colonized. Iran had encircled Israel. And of course, Hamas and Hezbollah in particular, commit terrorism around the world. So it was always a challenge to deal with Iran because you would get an asymmetrical terrorist response. Can you do me this favor, Olivia? See if you can find this. Go to Jared Kushner's Twitter feed and search for the word Lebanon. And I want to read what he said about Hezbollah because it was quite something. So every year the threat of, and let me know if you can find it. If you can, it's not the end of the world. But every year Iran was getting stronger and stronger because Obama had lifted a lot of the sanctions off it. And so Iran was getting rich off oil again. Frankly, even when the sanctions were there, Iran was selling its oil to China because China's not going to obey some sanctions. They bought the oil at a discount. Iran was getting stronger and stronger. It wasn't just threatening Israel, it was threatening the whole Sunni Arabs in the region. But what could you do about it? Here, let me read a little bit from Jared Kushner. And this was his thoughts on how to spread peace and how to de-escalate the region. Let me read just a little bit. Remember, Jared Kushner is Trump's son-in-law, and he was actually the point person on what's called the Abraham Accords. Let me read. September 27th is the most important day in the Middle East since the Abraham Accords breakthrough. Now, September 27th is when Israel decapitated Hezbollah, but let me read you this next paragraph. I have spent countless hours studying Hezbollah, and there's not an expert on earth who thought that what Israel has done to decapitate and degrade them was possible. This is significant because Iran is now fully exposed. The reason why their nuclear facilities have not been destroyed, despite weak air defense systems, is because Hezbollah has been a loaded gun pointed at Israel. Iran spent the last 40 years building this capability as its deterrent. President Trump would often say Iran has never won a war, but never lost a negotiation. The Islamic Republic's regime is much tougher when risking Hamas, Hezbollah, Syrian, and Houthi lives than when risking their own. Their foolish efforts to assassinate President Trump and hack his campaign reek of desperation and are hardening a large coalition against them. Anyway, I won't. It was a fascinating revelation. And, scroll a little bit more, just a little bit more. Go from there. Anyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, I'll skip ahead. After the brilliant rapid-fire tactical successes of the pagers, radios, and targeting of the leadership, Hezbollah's massive weapon cache is unguarded and unmanned. Most of Hezbollah's fighters are hiding in their tunnels. I'll stop there. It's a fascinating read. If you find it on Twitter, go and read it. Because the number one thing that came through there for me was Iran had found the way to deter Israel and the West. Because even if Iran itself wasn't particularly tough, it had all these terrorist proxies that would go kamikaze for it. Imagine if Iran had created a nuke and given one to Hamas or Hezbollah. So when Israel attacked Hezbollah in a startling move, remember the pagers? Israel's Mossad had managed to somehow convince Hezbollah to buy low-tech pagers, saying, they're less hackable by Israel. So Israel created a fake company that said, we're low-tech communications, perfect for people trying to avoid Israeli spies. So all the Hezbollah fighters had these low-tech pagers that actually had a little bit of explosive in it. And on command, Israel detonated and I think killed about 2,000 or 3,000 people. Yeah, and it's just these terrorists, wherever they were, they would just get this beep, and they would play that clip again. Some of them were just out and about. Remember, the terrorists in Hezbollah were not necessarily uniformed. In fact, they don't wear uniforms other than for their parades. So all across Lebanon, they were either killed or deeply injured at once. And then Israel sent a bunch of bunker buster missiles into an underground HQ and literally decapitated the entire top of the chain of command of Hezbollah. And then they went in and just took out the rockets. There were 100,000 rockets aimed at Israel. Maybe 10 of them were fired because Israel just decapitated Hezbollah in one fell swoop. And that's what caused Jared Kushner to write that memo I just read to you. And so Iran was getting closer and closer to a bomb. And Donald Trump, who always criticized Barack Obama's leniency towards Iran, Trump restarted negotiations with Iran. And frankly, I didn't like the sounds of it. I thought, how can you permit them to have nukes? Well, Trump always said they can't have nukes. They can't have nukes. He said he would negotiate with them, but he was actually quite clear, wasn't he? It looked a little bit like Trump and Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu were getting out of sorts, were getting out of sync with each other. But Trump did say to the Iranians, we've got 60 days to do a deal, and you're not going to get a better deal than this one. He said that. Now, Trump says a lot of things. He's got a blustery style sometimes. I've often said, don't take him literally, take him seriously. But in this case, it was both. Yesterday marked the 61st day after Trump told Iran, do a deal or it gets worse. And then after that, Trump said to Israel, do whatever you want. Well, Israel obviously kept in close touch with the United States. Israel uses American weapon systems, including the new F-35. Israel uses American bunker buster bombs that can actually go through rock and concrete and steel into underground bunkers. I don't even know how that technology works, but they can literally get into mountainside. I understand 50 such rockets were used, bunker busters, to get the head of Hezbollah. Well, that's what happened last night. It was similar to the Israeli operation against Hezbollah. And Olivia, if you could just put in the background exactly as many, is this a sound up clip here? No. Okay, put up as many B-roll shots in the background, because most of them, there's no one talking. It's just interesting images. And I'll try and talk a little. I've probably seen 500 images overnight. I was riveted. So you can see these were bunker busters. I think this may be in, I forget the name of this town. There were underground missile factories and underground nuclear facilities. And this was one of them that was hit with bunker busters. And this would be this morning after the sun rose. Keep cycling through as many videos as possible. So they went after nuclear facilities. They went after missile launch facilities. But I think perhaps the most important thing they did, and Olivia, maybe you can go to one of these, is show the fancy apartments that they surgically sent missiles into particular suites into the apartment buildings. So these are I'm talking about the towers in Tehran. I believe that the entire leadership of the Iranian military has been killed. Yeah, that's a perfect one right there. So look at this. This is a fashionable, modern condo apartment, the kind of thing you would see in Toronto or New York. And this is filmed by someone on the street of Tehran. The building wasn't detonated, but a particular suites in the building were. Put through a few others, because there's one that's quite remarkable. You can see a hole in the wall and some scorch marks. And literally just one unit in an apartment was taken out. They did a decapitation strike on the Iranian military the same way they did on Hezbollah. They got the head of the Republican Guard. They got the chief of staff of the Defense Command. Just throw up the one I mean that had, there's a little scorched hole in the side of a condo. Anyway, put it up when you find it. This was all done so simultaneously. And the Israeli government released imagery of pre-positioned agents in Iran. Like, they weren't even in Israel, they were in Iran, launching attack drones from within Iran. So they were much closer, much, a shorter time to get to their targets, much more likely to hit their targets. I bet if you just, that's the one right there. That's the image right there. So let me show you this. This is a surgical strike. I don't know who lived in this particular place. This is what you do when you're trying to get one guy. You're not trying to detonate the whole building. You're getting one guy. That's how precise Israel's attack was. They didn't have the pager munitions, but they had deep intelligence on where every single person was. They took out the head of the nuclear program. They took out the head of their expeditionary force, the Republican Guards. And they attacked as many missile and drone launch sites as possible. Now, I'm sure they didn't get it all, but in one evening, a sneak attack to take out the chain of command. How do you go for a reply volley when all the deciders are gone? It would be like in an org chart, getting rid of the CEO, all the vice presidents, all the managing directors, all the department heads. You're left with soldiers, but who makes the decision and what is the decision? It's just an incredible thing. There's some videos that the Israelis have released, and there's one that shows different aircraft. They did use jet aircraft. They used drones. They used forward placed drones. They're interesting to look at. That might be it there. Oh, that's a jet being refueled. I understand that might be over Syria, but there is quite something to, like, the refueling jets. That's how Israeli jets get from their airbase in Israel all the way 1,500 kilometers away to Iran. But the fact that they felt confident enough to have a slow-moving refueling jet flying like that shows that they would have wiped out Iran's air defenses. Now, that's not to say that there's no counterattack coming, but it's going to be so utterly degraded, it'll be like Hezbollah in Lebanon. Speaking of which, show that. There's another apartment there. Just show that apartment right there. Yeah, I think that's a good one to show. And let me read the tweet behind it too. This is how precise Israel's intelligence and execution is. Pinpointed attack, eliminating the head of the IRGC, that's the Republican Guard Corps, directly in his apartment, nearly 2,000 kilometers away from Israel. So that's where the boss of the Republican Guard, now Republican Guard is considered a terrorist group in Canada and many other countries. He was living up there. They didn't detonate the whole place. In fact, the lights are still on, on the same floor on the other side of the elevator shaft. That's how they did it. So the timing must have been absolutely perfect, because if one attack happened an hour before another, they would not. It's just a remarkable act of intelligence and planning and coordination and logistics. And I would say mainly intelligence, to know where these people are, to know how they would operate. Show more images as we go, even of the burning facilities, because to target these underground bunkers and factories, to know where they are, to know the best way in, to have people on the ground. Anyhow, what I'm trying to say, and I don't know if I'm effective at saying it, is that I believe Iran went from a regional power that sought to be a regional superpower that had terrified its neighbors for a generation, that had significant success in building a missile system and a nuclear system. It went from that to being utterly degraded militarily, to have the chain of command decapitated in one night. Now, I haven't checked to see what the reaction has been. Have they been able to muster some drones and fire back? I know that in Israel, the whole country was put under a lockdown. They shut down the airport in Tel Aviv. They sent everyone an alert on their cell phone telling them to stay in their, put that one on the screen, to stay in their bomb shelter. Every Israeli apartment has a, these are scenes from Iran, of course, has either a bomb shelter or a safe room that's sealed in case there's an attack with gas. So Israel is under a self-declared lockdown. Show that one too. Just what the pinpoint nature of it shows, I think, the difference between how Israel fights and how Iran fights. I remember a few months ago when Iran fired a volley of rockets and missiles at Israel. They mainly missed. One of the Hezbollah rockets, I think it was, killed a group of Druze Arab children. Like when Iran fires things, they're not hyper-precise missiles like Israel does. But Israel managed to take out individual people or individual sites. Just incredible. And what's my point? Yeah, show that picture there. Just as a collage of this is how do you take out the senior management of a country's military? Well, I saw some pundit who compared this to the scene in The Godfather, where Michael Corleone ordered the simultaneous assassination of the heads of the 5 families. And it was actually a very dramatic scene in The Godfather, for those of you who know that movie. He's basically ordered a hit against the capo di tutti I capi of all his rival families. That's what Israel did last night. And in fact, the chief negotiator who was dealing with the American negotiators, he was one of the ones eliminated. So I don't think they took out Khamenei, the actual religious boss of Iran, but they pretty much took out the entire military personnel underneath them. Why do I say this is the most important strategic development in a generation? Well, I think you can figure it out by now. Iran's nuclear program is devastated, most likely forever. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, says it will be destroyed forever and they'll never let Iran get it. I think Iran's conventional weapons have been flattened as well. The surface-to-air missiles, as far as we know, none of them shot down any Israeli jets. I understand that hundreds of Israeli jets were used, F-16s and F-15s, and the new F-35 Lightnings. To do that operation and not suffer any flights being down, at least not that I've heard of, is remarkable. So Iran now is vulnerable. It has no air defense. It has no proxies in Syria or Lebanon that can shoot back for it. The Houthis are still around in Yemen, I guess, and they might lob some missiles. But it's not the absolutely terrifying ring around Israel that there was a few months ago. Interesting, put Donald Trump's latest comment. Trump actually said, I hope we can continue our negotiation. Like in a way, it's an absolutely startling thing to say. Yeah, put that up, pump that up big, and I'll do my best to read it. So I'll read it verbatim when I get it, but he basically said, hey guys, I told you to negotiate. You didn't listen to me. Let's give it a shot. I'll read it verbatim when you find it. But I think he means it. But with Trump, there's always an enormously entertaining wit behind it. Like they were just flattened. Literally, the guy who was leading the negotiations opposite your guy is gone. I think that's Trump's way of saying, well, that was Israel who hit you. I'm still interested in a deal. Let me see if I can find it here. You keep looking for it. There's a Twitter account that reposts all his Truth Social stuff. All right, find it. Put it up when you find it. So Trump is still saying, "Oh yeah, I told you so. Told you, it wouldn't do well." I think Trump is claiming a little bit more. Oh, yeah, that's the one. So this was posted this morning at 7:30 a.m. He said, 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have, perhaps, a second chance. That is cheeky. I mean, there's other statements made by different officials that are suggesting that Israel is nowhere near done, that they're going to go in and root out a lot of the long-feared military and terrorist infrastructure, just like they did in Lebanon with Hezbollah. So when Israel took out the thousands of Hezbollah operatives with those pagers, they didn't just leave it there. When Hezbollah was stunned and reeling and decapitated, Israel then sent in a lot of special forces to destroy actual missiles, actual tunnels, actual bunkers. They did the same thing in Syria when Bashar Assad fled and there was this void. Israel knew where the missile factories were and they went in with special forces on the ground to destroy them. I suspect that's happening right now in Iran as well. So yes, there's the shock and awe missiles and bunker busters that are on TV, but I am quite sure that if Israel is as serious as I think they are, as they obviously are, that they are taking this opportunity when Iran is confused and leaderless militarily to go in and clean up things, boots on the ground. In fact, last night, as I mentioned, Israel sort of boasted. See if you can find that. I'll read this truth post from Trump, but as soon as that's done, see if you can find the footage that Israel released of their people on the ground in Iran, which is an interesting thing to do. First of all, it makes Iranian leaders paranoid. Who's on the ground and where? Let me read one more Truth Social. He said, I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words to just do it. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I told them it would be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told. That the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far. And that Israel has a lot of it, with much more to come. And they know how to use it. Certain Iranian hardliners spoke bravely, but they didn't know what was about to happen. They are all dead now, and it will only get worse. There has already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left, and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. No more death, no more destruction. Just do it before it is too late. God bless you all. I think he put that out last night, if I recall. Again, astonishing. And it is true. Those American weapons are absolutely critical. I don't think Israel has the ability to make bunker busters on their own. The F-35 jet is an American jet. I'm sure other technology is American too. And by the way, Trump used similar language with Vladimir Putin about a month ago about, Putin should come to the table or shocking and surprising things will happen. And that was before Ukraine sent those drones to detonate Russian strategic bombers from within Russia. That's sort of the same tactic that Israel used here. Here's an image. This is a little video clip that Israel released. It's night footage of what Israel says were their special operators on the ground. You can see that one guy has what looks like night vision goggles on. That other person looks, I don't know, like a Bedouin or something. I don't know they would be called in Iran. This was purportedly people pre-positioned in advance in Iran near the sites, launching the attacks from within their own country. And again, I say, I would imagine the purpose of Israel releasing that footage would be to cause paranoia and distrust within Iran. Who are these people on the ground? Where are they? By the way, can you call up the trailer to the TV show Tehran? I just got to say this. I saw a tweet. There was an incredible show. I think it was on HBO or maybe it was on Apple. It was called Tehran. And it was all about this. It was a TV series a couple of years ago, and it was about this great and terrible gang. You play a minute of this. I highly recommend this show. Sound up.
Do what you have to do. I will be home by tomorrow afternoon.
یه اتفاق بعد افتاده. یه مأمور موساد وارد ایران شده.
اسرائیلیات میخوان یه کار بزرگ بکنن. The coast is clear. Take care of the package.
I'm in. Copy that.
همین امروز میخوام گیرش بندازم. اینو پیدا کن.
The cops are here. You have to get out.
I'm almost done. התחילה את הפריצה הפיזית.
دیگه کی هستی؟
The mission is burned. They're on to you now. من مخلوط شدم؟
از مسکن עכשיו. جایی ندارم برم. فقط یه شب.
میدونی قایم کردن یه اسرائیلی یعنی چی؟
I will get you out. I'll do whatever it takes.
داره کارشو میکنه.
I need your help. The police are looking for me. They're questioning everyone here.
دست بالا بیا بیرون. تو میدونی ازت چی میخوام؟
نه من هیچ وقت خانمو ندیدم.
You keep lying to me. You're not gonna make it home alive. If I were you, I'd get my revenge on all of Tehran. You have till midnight. Do not test me.
יש לי כיוון לפעולה. חייבת להוריד פרופיל. We're not gonna get another chance.
من میخوام حالشون رو بگیرم و به زانو درشون بیارم. طوری که همه دنیا ببینه.
There's no going back now.
I got to tell you, I don't watch a ton of TV shows. That was the most exciting TV show I watched that year. Maybe it's because I have an interest in the subject, but it was so perfectly done, so riveting, so heart-pounding. It's a little bit in English, a little bit in Persian, a little bit in Hebrew. Of course, there's subtitles throughout the whole way. That was about what happened last night. That whole fictional series was what would it look like for Israel to insert Mossad actors into Iran and coordinate with the Israeli military to have an attack on Iran, including using state-of-the-art fighter jets and including having assets on the ground. And I won't give away the absolutely dramatic ending to the show, but it was quite something. I loved that show because of how well done it was. But now I frankly want to watch it again, given that we just had that happen in real life. I want to talk a little bit more about the reaction to it, though. So anyhow, to conclude the first 42 minutes of my rant, Israel did to Iran what it did to Hezbollah. Decapitated the regime, knocked out its experts, its commanders, the whole chain of command. It would be like wiping out an organization's top 3 or 4 tiers of an org chart. And then went in and destroyed the assets, the military assets, during the chaos. And I think that Israel's going to mop up for a few days too, by the way. Just incredible. I think the number one beneficiary of what happened is Israel, obviously, because Iran has hated Israel under Khomeini. I should tell you that before the Ayatollahs, Iran was actually very pro-Western and pro-Israel. Under the Shah, Iran was a Western ally. They sold oil in a pipeline to Israel. They bought American fighter jets. Iran was one of the good guys. And then this religious fanatic, the Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, as his name was, who had been in exile in France, came back to Iran, had a revolution, and you've probably seen some of the pictures of Iran before the Ayatollah. Can you Google women protesting hijab in Iran? Because Iran was one of the most progressive, advanced societies in the region. They're their own ethnicity, Persian. It's different from Arab. They're in, as Trump alluded to, they're in from the 70s. Yeah, that one on the second row on the left. That's the one. So it was a modern country, very well educated, friendly to its Jews, for example. Did not have restrictions. And look at this. After Khomeini came in, he said, we're bringing in a law, you have to wear a burqa. And here are the women of Tehran. Look at that. Tens of thousands of women saying, we don't want to wear the burqa. Well, guess what? The sword is mightier than the pen. And all of these women were forced to wear burqas. And the Ayatollahs were so extreme. I should tell you that Margaret Atwood, the author of what's that? Just The Handmaid's Tale. Thank you. She wrote. Google it. Google Margaret Atwood, Handmaid's Tale, Iran. Let me show you some source here that I'm not just talking on spec. It was after that revolution that she wrote The Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, click and then just searching for Iran. Yeah, pump it up. Yeah, and show that on the screen. Yeah, right there. So this is just from Wikipedia, but if you want to go deeper, you'll find it elsewhere. Atwood was also inspired by the Islamic Revolution in Iran, 1978-79, that saw theocracy established that drastically reduced the rights of women and imposed a strict dress code on Iranian women, very much like that of Gilead. In The Handmaid's Tale, a reference is made to the Islamic Republic of Iran in the form of the history book Iran and Gilead, two late 20th century monotheocracies mentioned in the endnotes describing the Historians' Convention in 2195. Atwood's picture of a society ruled by men who professed high moral principles but are in fact self-interested and selfish was inspired, blah, 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 Canadian politicians, Toronto, blah, blah, blah. Thanks very much. Here's what gets me about The Handmaid's Tale. It was an Iranian story. It was an Islamic extremism story. That was what inspired Margaret Atwood. She couldn't have imagined it herself, but it happened. And as a young woman, she wrote about it, but she lacked the courage, I think. Or maybe maybe it was an artistic conceit that had its own value. She said, no, I'm going to pretend that Christians are like this. No, The Handmaid's Tale that's not how Christians are. That's a caricature of conservative Christians. That's what people who hate Christians think Christians might be like, but that's not what Christians are like. There is a country that's like that. We know that because she acknowledges that's what inspired her. The Handmaid's Tale is about Iran, but Margaret Atwood has never had the courage to really say so. So, anyways, I think today is an amazing day. Here's why. Number one, the regional cult that was seeking to dominate every Sunni Muslim, Sunni Arab country in the region, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, etc., has now been chopped back to size and is no longer a real threat to Israel, the Saudis, or others. I think its development of an atomic bomb has really been set back to zero, and if it hasn't fully been yet, it will be in the days ahead. I think the funding and direction for Hezbollah and Hamas has been cut almost to nothing. Those two groups have been decimated by Israel anyways, but now, I mean, the head of the Republican Guard Corps, all the key people who were going back and forth to Lebanon and Syria and Gaza, they're dead anyways. The funding is gone, the direction is gone, the training is gone, the equipping is gone. Who's going to step up and fill that space? Qatar, maybe. I doubt it. They've got a lot of money, but they don't have the equipment and the experience of doing actual industrial scale terrorism. That was Iran's job. I think that you will immediately see round 2 of the Abraham Accords start. Pistol shot. It started. This was the most success. I think one of the reasons Trump is speaking so highly about Israel's success in that second post is because he sort of wants to take some credit for it, and indeed he should. It's American weapons, and America did permit this attack. So let Trump take some credit. I think he was being strategically. Can you pull up Marco Rubio's statement from last night? The first thing out of the U.S. administration was from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who basically said, this wasn't us, and no one should attack us in reply. And that was a wise thing to say, I think. But the degree of success that Israel had, I think Trump knows a winner when he sees it. Just go to Marco Rubio's own account, and it would be Secretary Rubio. He's got a few accounts. One of them is that's the one, that black and white one. Oh, let me turn off my ringer. Normally I do. Let me read this statement from Rubio. So he said this last night. He said, tonight Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in the strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. So that was their stance last night. They were basically saying, they were talking to two different markets. They were saying to Iran, don't you touch our people, this isn't us. And they were saying to America First supporters in the homeland, don't you worry, there's no American troops here. We're not fighting a war. Someone else is, our ally is, but it's not us. We approve of their aims, perhaps, but it's not our war. I think that was a very wise tweet, but you can see the one tomorrow. Trump is saying, yeah, that's American equipment. The Israelis knew how to use it. There's more where that comes from. So I think, as they say, failure is an orphan, defeat is an orphan, but victory has 1,000 fathers. So I want to talk about the world's reaction to what happened. In a way, it doesn't even matter. I saw Emmanuel Macron this morning says, I might delay the conference I was going to hold on a new Palestinian state. Yeah, I think a lot of the air has gone out of that balloon. The reason why Palestinians were they're right there. Emmanuel Macron has delayed the planned conference on recognizing a Palestinian state. My reaction there was, does anyone on either side of the conflict ever ask what would Macron do? I mean, no one gives a hoot. And there's a guy who's got his own radical Islam problem now, doesn't he? But with Iran cut down to size, with Hezbollah neutralized, with Syria neutralized, with Gaza on the ropes, who would say, yeah, I have a really strong motivation to give a reward to Hamas in the form of a country? That's not the diplomatic energy now. The diplomatic energy now is Abraham Accords Part 2. And to get Saudi Arabia in, to get other Gulf states in. And, you know, I know a lot of Persians. The Persians were historically friends of the Jews. It was King Cyrus that liberated Jerusalem and the Jews. To this day, many Jews name their kids Cyrus in admiration and thanks to the Persian king. And like I say, until the Shah was deposed, Iran and Israel and Iran and America were friends. And there's an enormous expat population of Persians in Vancouver, in Toronto, in LA, who are very pro-freedom, pro-Western. It's a very different culture than the death cult culture of the Ayatollahs. All those women we showed you there who were protesting against the burqa being brought in, those who could leave went to LA and Vancouver and places like that. And I think that there is a real chance. Can you look up Noah? Let me just try and remember her name. I think it might be Noah Berg. She's a Persian tweeter, and she and others have been saying this may be the moment when ordinary Iranians rise up. Ordinary people in Iran hate the crazy death cult extremists who have ruled over them. And I don't know if you remember, there was a bit of an uprising in Obama's term, and Obama didn't even say a word, didn't even give them rhetorical encouragement, let alone help them in any way. I think Israel's goal was to eliminate the threat against it. Yeah, that's her right there. So here's someone named Nayo Berg. Let me read her biography. She says, possibly the most famous Iranian Jew on X, advocate for Iranian monarchy, restoration, and Israel, anti-woke, number 17 most wanted by the regime in Iran. Okay. What I like about her is she tweets a lot of interesting things. Just, let's just go through some of them. The one right there and put that on the screen and we'll go down from there. We'll just scroll through her. So here she says, I'm so full. Can you boost it one size? But the cutlets keep coming. It's a buffet at this point. Okay. She's using a metaphor, but these are leaders of Iran who were killed. Saudi Arabia is allowing Israel to shoot down drones over its airspace. Normalization is coming soon. We know that's a fact. Saudi Arabia did that once before. Iranians all across Iran are thanking Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu for destroying the regime. Thank you, baby. Thank you, Israel. Please continue. And she's giving evidence of that. She's quite good at giving evidence of things on the ground in Iran. I think she's got sort of a trap line of sources. Go to the next one. Ballistic missiles aimed at Israel are malfunctioning, falling and exploding all across Iran. I don't know if that's true. She calls it unconfirmed. Let's scroll a little bit. That looks like a fake photo there. Anyhow, listen, as always, take things with a grain of salt you find on Twitter. But my point by referring to her is there's a lot of Persians, a lot of Iranians who want to renormalize their country. And it's not a failed state in the same way that Libya is or Syria is. Iran really is the inheritor of a great civilization. It is, like China. It's got a history, a language, a culture. It is just different from those around it. And its support for Hezbollah and Hamas had no connection to Persian traits or qualities or history or language, or there was no connection. It was just a cultish scheme by the Ayatollahs. So the idea of Iran becoming normalized again is very real if they knock off the Ayatollahs, and I think that's a real possibility. But even if they don't, they have detonated Iran as a regional superpower. Israel operates there at pleasure, flying over it, people on the ground. That's why I call this the most momentous strategic shift in a generation. So what does Emmanuel Macron think about it? Who cares? Like literally, who cares? But you can see even he is not so stupid as to proceed with this. Hey guys, the diplomatic energy is to reward the Palestinians for what they've done. No, the diplomatic energy now is the Abraham Accords Part 2. And it wouldn't surprise me if you see some Iranians rise up and knock off the Ayatollahs. Let's read some statements from Canadians. Why not? We're Canadian. Let's start with Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the opposition. A few months ago, he said, it was back in October, where he basically, he was asked, what do you think of Israel hitting Iran? Let's play the clip if you've got that. This is from October, but it's as relevant, even more relevant today. Let's take a look.
Yesterday you said that you endorse Israel proactively defending itself by hitting Iran's nuclear sites, which is something that President Joe Biden does not endorse. Do you not feel like this could lead to a likelihood of an all-out conventional war between Iran and Israel? And do you not agree with Joe Biden and his assessment?
I think the idea of allowing a genocidal, theocratic, unstable dictatorship that is desperate to avoid being overthrown by its own people to develop nuclear weapons is about the most dangerous and irresponsible thing that the world could ever allow. And if Israel were to stop that genocidal, theocratic, unstable government from acquiring nuclear weapons, it would be a gift by the Jewish state to humanity.
I think he's right, and it was a very bold statement, and that's what you're going to see, is now that the bully has been defeated, all sorts of good things can happen in that region. And my point of showing you Jared Kushner's memo was that they could never figure out, how do we proceed when Iran has that gun to everyone's head through Hezbollah? Hezbollah's gone now, and Iran's gone now. Here's Anita Anand. I just checked, and Mark Carney, the prime minister, hasn't said a word. He doesn't know what to say without offending the Hamas wing of his party. Here's Anita Anand, who is part of the Hamas wing. Last night she said, Canada is closely following the escalation of tensions between Israel and Iran. Further action risks triggering a broader regional conflict with devastating consequences. De-escalation must be the priority. We urge all parties to refrain from actions and further destabilize the region. The protection of civilians must be paramount. Well, let me stop right here. Do you think that destroying Iran's chaotic terrorist Republican Guard and their nuclear plant makes things riskier or de-risks them? I think this is the greatest de-escalation in the region in 50 years. When she says the protection of civilians must be paramount, I showed you the laser-like accuracy of Israel's attacks. Canada remains deeply concerned by the threat posed by Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile program. No, Canada doesn't. Canada ignores those. And you just in the previous sentence said, stop shooting. Hey, Israel, stop shooting. Anyways, I don't think there's a single person either on the Iranian side or the Israeli side that really cares what Anita Anand has to say. I just don't think so. Here's the British Prime Minister, who is the most loathsome Prime Minister imaginable. Let me read it to you. It's pure Keir Starmer. The reports of these strikes are concerning, and we urge all parties to step back and reduce tensions urgently. Escalation serves no one in the region. No, it serves the interests of anyone who wants the nukes destroyed. Stability in the Middle East must be the priority, and we are engaging partners to de-escalate. What does that mean, you're engaging partners to de-escalate? Can you use English, please? Now is the time for restraint, calm, and a return to diplomacy. No, first of all, I don't think Keir Starmer's involved in any diplomacy. Again, who cares what he says? Donald Trump had 60 days of diplomacy, and he said, okay, time's up. Do you think the world is safer today than it was yesterday? I think that's a pretty basic IQ test, don't you? Let me help you if you need some background, if you haven't been listening for the past hour. Iran's air defenses are gone. Iran's missile systems are gone. Iran's nuclear plants have been blown up. Iran's terrorist leadership is being decapitated. Do you think that makes the world safer or less safe? Well, to Keir Starmer and Anita Anand, we have to de-escalate. No, I don't think so. There is, I've seen it over the last couple of years, especially since October 7th, but before that a little bit, that influencers, journalists, pundits, think tanks, even universities have taken a lot of money from Qatar. Can you Google Trump influencer Qatar, because there's a story about how about 40 right-wing pro-Trump influencers have been hired by Qatar to, I can't find it there, but how Qatar has, yeah, that's it there. The new lobbying Qatar. There you go. Wall Street Journal story. Perfect. Even just give me, you know how to find that one on archive.p. Perfect. So Qatar is smart. They know that the Democrats are pro-terrorism anyways, but how about Trump? Let me read this headline. This is from the Wall Street Journal. The new lobbying. Qatar targeted 250 Trump influencers to change U.S. policy. Blockaded by Mideast neighbors, the Emirate deployed an unconventional lobbying campaign to win over an unconventional U.S. president. Let's just read the first sentence if we can. Longtime New York restaurateur Joey Allahan visited Manhattan's Park East Synagogue late last year with Alan Dershowitz. Come visit Doha, the capital of Qatar, by invitation of the Emir. It goes on and on. But my point is there's all these people on Twitter who so obviously are being paid to say insane things. Can you call up Jackson Hinkle's account? Jackson Hinkle is someone I had never really heard of until October 7th. And he isn't just anti-Semitic, which he is. He's pro-Iran. He's pro-Houthi. He actually went to Lebanon for the funeral of the leader of Hezbollah. Here he is praising, breaking, Iranian air defenses finally seem to be working. Scroll down a little more. Iran promises retaliation. Keep going. Prepare the hypersonics. There's him. I don't know if that really, I think that really is him with Khomeini. Keep going. The Iranian revolution demands a strong retaliation. Iran will reportedly launch 100 ballistic missiles. Not enough, in my opinion. Like this guy, all you need to know is he actually went to Beirut for the funeral of a terrorist. That's not normal. There's no real American right-winger who says that. That's not a thing. And yet you see these people on Twitter and you know it's because they're getting paid. No American would say that. Certainly not on the right. Some Americans on the left would say that. I'll grant you that. But no conservative, no Trump supporter would ever be pro-terrorist or would chant death to America. Speaking of which, pull up Candace Owens' tweet. She's someone who's gone absolutely crazy over the last year. I'm not even going to call it anti-Israel. It's anti-Semitic. She's got this crazy theory about Jews not actually being really Jews. Anyway, so let me read. This is what she tweeted today. Our foreign policy is dictated by Israel. Trump will continue to do as he's told by Netanyahu. If you want to know what America will do, spare yourself the fake White House press briefings and start listening to Bibi. We are a colony of Israel. Your politicians are bought and paid for. What did America do yesterday? I mean, it sold weapons to Israel. I grant you that. But America did not go to war yesterday. In fact, you saw Donald Trump. He's still saying, let's talk. I really want to show what Candace tweeted last night. Yeah, this is the one here. This one, I think, shows the emptiness of the anti-Israel right in America. This is Candace Owens last night. The most predictable war plausibly ever. Okay, I think that's true. Iran is threatening Israel with atomic extermination. Israel has been saying they won't allow that to happen. Yeah, I agree. It's a predictable war. I'm so sick of Israel, we know that, and those who pretend its actions are normal or even remotely justifiable. So you're saying that if another country were to threaten America with a nuclear weapon program and attack it hundreds of times, that America wouldn't fight back? Do we have the clip of her talking about Pearl Harbor? Were you able to find that? No, okay. Candace Owens gave an interview at GB News. And she said she didn't think America should join the Second World War. And the interviewer, Steve Edgington, said, even after Pearl Harbor? And she said something like, oh, I got to think about that. What? Her husband, who's on the board of GB News, contacted GB News and demanded that they take down the clip. I think we have a copy of the original, though. I'll try and find it. So, yeah, I mean, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, what did America do? They fought a total war, ending in the nuking of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. There were about 3,000 people who died in Pearl Harbor. Millions of Japanese soldiers and civilians died in the war that followed. That's how war goes, I'm afraid, especially if an enemy threatens to kill you, sneak attacks you. So yeah, anyway, back to the tweet. I'm so sick of Israel and those who pretend its actions are normal or even remotely justifiable. No, I don't think you are. I think you just don't like the Jews, because there's wars around the world all the time you don't obsess over. This country has a bloodlust like no other. No, you're just an anti-Semite. Israel was attacked on October 7th by Hamas, and then other terrorist groups constantly attack it. Israel is stopping that. Israel makes peace with its neighbors whenever they would. Israel has a peace treaty with Egypt. Israel has a peace agreement with Jordan. Israel now has a peace agreement with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain, with Sudan. Israel gave away the entire Sinai Desert, including air bases, including oil, to Egypt just for peace. It was called Land for Peace. A real peace deal is peace for peace. Never before has the victor in a war given up land to have peace with the defeated. Israel smashed Egypt in a war. But Israel wanted peace so badly that they said, fine, you can have all the land back. Just let's be friends. Let me continue reading this anti-Semitic tweet by Candace. That's what it is. Have an issue with this tweet? I literally do not care. Think defending Israel's demonic actions is going to guarantee you a spot in heaven? No, I'm not thinking of this in some theological sense. I know you've rebranded yourself as a Christian. I don't think it's demonic. In fact, I showed earlier on the live stream how precise Israel's attacks were, like literally taking out one apartment unit in an apartment building so precisely that literally other apartments on the same floor were untouched. I don't think that's ever been done in war before. Can you Google Mosul, M-O-S-U-L, final battle? I want to show you, and I'm not criticizing, I'm just comparing. The United States, mainly, with some help from the Brits, liberated the city of Mosul. Yeah, any of those. The top left one will do. Liberated Mosul from ISIS. Mosul was a city of over 1 million in Iraq that had been conquered. It was the leading city. This is Mosul when it was finally liberated by America and the UK. That's not Gaza. Hey, Google one more thing. Chechnya. Russia, surrender. I want to show you how Russia fights its wars. They literally seal off cities and just, this is what they did in Chechnya, and they just artilleried it until there was nothing left standing. If you can find that, great. If not, it might be hard. That would have been a while ago. Like just Chechnya rubble. You know, how's that? Israel didn't rubble Tehran. Yeah, any of those will do. So this is how, I showed you how America and the UK fight in Mosul, and it's brutal, it's tough. That's what happens when terrorists base themselves in an urban residential environment. You can't stop fighting a terrorist just because this is Chechnya. That's Russia fighting Chechen separatists in Chechnya, who happen to be Muslim, by the way. And in Mosul, they happen to be Muslim, by the way. So back to Candace's tweet. Which is demonic? Now, the answer is both of them are wars. All of them are wars. It's just an unfortunate thing that terrorists hide amongst civilians. In Chechnya, they did. In Mosul, they did. In Tehran, Israel pinpointed them. Go back to the tweet from Candace. It's not demonic. It was the opposite of demonic. They wiped out the entire leadership of the Iranian military. They wiped out their nuclear plants and their ballistic missile plants. I'd be surprised if there were 20 civilians in the whole country that died. This may be the lowest civilian casualty war in history. I'll keep reading. Double your indulgences and sign your offspring up to die for Netanyahu. Leave the rest of us the hell alone. See, that's the thing. Candace and others on the Qatar right keep talking about no participation, no American soldiers, no American blood for Israeli wars. And I agree. I think that America has been too adventurous overseas with its own troops. I have been a skeptic of the gleefulness that some Western leaders have taken towards the war in Ukraine. I support Trump's goal of ending that war, not continuing it. I agree. To which I would say, where has a single American soldier fought in the last 24 hours? Now, maybe there was some CIA information sharing. I'm sure that's the case, just the same way the Mossad shares some information with America. But I think Candace was angry in that tweet for a few reasons. First of all, Iran got clobbered. Second of all, the world is going to fall. It's going to be carnage. Her predictions are all wrong. The world has not been this safe in years. And finally, she doesn't get to say, I told you so. Donald Trump is sending young men to war. He didn't. In fact, I just read to you Trump's comments from a few hours ago where he said, hey, let's get back to the bargaining table. Candace Owens is furious that the Jews defended themselves against terrorists. She's furious that Israel defended itself so precisely that it kept the civilian death toll as close to zero as possible. She's furious that all her predictions are wrong. She should be jubilant that a cult-like terrorist country with a nuclear program has been knocked back to zero. She should be jubilant that the same Iran that funded Hezbollah and Hamas, which murdered hundreds of U.S. Marines in Lebanon in the 80s, she should be jubilant that they're knocked out. She's not, because she's part of what I call the Qatar right. I say again, I do not believe it is real or authentic to have anti-Semites on the American right. It's just not the culture. On the American left, yes. On the foreign-funded anything, of course. It makes no sense. But then again, this is the wacky gal who said that America should not have even entered Second World War. Even after Pearl Harbor, she said she had to have a think about it. One of the things I'm happiest about is that no Americans were involved in this war. And I think Donald Trump's tweets had a kind of admiration in them. This attack on Iran was as successful as the attack on Hezbollah a few months ago, which also infuriated the Candace Owenses of the world because it was so precise. They couldn't reach to their anti-Semitic tropes of, oh, the Jewish bloodlust. Oh, Americans are involved. No, neither. It was so focused on the actual bad guys, and Israel suffered next to no losses themselves. That's what made Candace Owens wanted a conflagration so she could blame the Jews, so she could say, I was right, so she could be holier than thou about Donald Trump. None of that happened. The world is a safer place today than it was yesterday. Saudi Arabia is safer. United Arab Emirates are safer. All the moderate Arab countries are safer today than they were yesterday. And you know what's going to happen next? There will be a second round of peace. Hey, welcome back. Your letters to me. On Israel in my live stream, John Hubbard says, No, no, no. This is exactly the opposite of what we voted Trump into office for. No, zero new wars. Stop this madness. Well, I don't think Trump was elected for no wars anywhere in the world. He was saying no wars that America would be part in. Americans didn't vote for the prime minister of Israel. He actually won his election on a promise to defend Israel. I think this was a harmonious result, so I'm going to disagree with you. As far as I know, not a single American fighter pilot or soldier was involved. It was Israel. They bought U.S. weapons, but it was not an American war. I think it was an Israeli war and a preemptive defensive war against a cult-like Islamic extremist country that had threatened Israel with nuclear annihilation. I think the world is much safer today than it was yesterday. This was, I mean, you could call it a war, but other than a few special operations men on the ground, it's not an invasion. It's not a massive war like between Russia and Ukraine, a meat grinder of 1,000 men a day. This is more a high-tech war, and so far it has degraded Iran's capabilities tremendously. Simu says, as an Irishman, I agree with every word you said, Ezra. Keep the truth coming. Well, I appreciate that. If you're referring to my visit to Cork last week, I always enjoy going to Ireland, and I learned so much. I have a lot more to learn. It's got a fascinating history, but mainly I learn about people willing to stand up for their country and their history and for the safety of their women. I think the number one argument that I hear in Ireland is their opposition to migrant men is safety of women, because the men who are being brought over, military-age single men, have disproportionately, I hate to say it, become rapists in that and other countries. Garrick says, Rebel News most definitely deserves to be at the summit. The people deserve the truth. You're talking about the G7. I'm not sure if we deserve to be anywhere, but we have the right to be anywhere that the other media does. And if it's the government that decides, they need to have a compelling reason why we can't, not simply because Mark Carney or his staff don't like us. If it's a government function paid for by the public, it ought to be accessible to anyone on the same terms. And I will continue to fight this. And I think the government now knows that when we threaten them with a lawsuit, we're serious. We follow through with it. And hopefully it'll make us have to fight less battles in the future. That's a show for today. I hope to see some of you in Red Deer tomorrow. Until next time, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters, to you at home, good night, and keep fighting for freedom.